Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure again to welcome you back to another exciting episode of Marshall Musings. Today I'm joined by Chris Johnston Sensei, who is the Chief Instructor of the Shindokan Dojo just outside Toronto. It's an amazing pleasure to have you here, sir.
Chris, thank you so much for the invitation.
We've been waiting a couple of weeks for this to happen. You've been super busy, and then some stuff with me came up, but I'm glad we've got an hour or so that we can sit down together and have a chat.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Could I just firstly ask you to share a bit about your personal training history in both Yoshinkan Aikido and your other martial arts that you have a very high proficiency in?
Sure. I guess it was, I want to say 84 was when I began martial arts. So young guy in my early 20s at university, and I came across a demonstration from the karate club, and absolutely enthralled, like I guess a lot of young guys would be, and I joined right away. So I did karate, oh boy, probably till the early 90s. So about mid-90s, 22 years or so before I finally stopped. For quite some time, I did Aikido and karate at the same time. It got more and more difficult, though, and difficult in terms of karate. It became obvious that I was switched completely to Aikido, because what I found in my training was that the Aikido training, I was training with Kimeda Sensei in Hamilton, not far from here. And when I went to my karate classes, what I was doing didn't fit. And it was particularly obvious when I was sparring. I was far less aggressive, interestingly enough, but at the same time, people didn't really know how to fight me anymore. And I'm not sure if that makes me a better karate guy or a better Aikido guy, but I took it as a sign of better Aikido guy.
Yeah.
And around that time, I started to have kids, and it's like life got busy, so I had to pick one. And for me, there was no struggle whatsoever in terms of which one. And really, I haven't looked back since. I've been with the same teacher for, well, we're up to 33 or so years now. Wow. That's Kimeda Sensei here in Canada.
Yep.
I've through his good graces, I've had the chance to train with almost all of the top Japanese teachers and Western teachers as well, and gotten to meet them and know them. But really, without sounding falsely humble, it really is thanks to him. I mean, without his connection, I'm just some guy doing my thing on the side here, Yeah. And then, and here we are today.
And so when was the Shindokan, firstly, where did the name come from, and how long have you been established as the chief instructor there?
Yeah, thanks. So we began in this is our 8th year. We just had Paie Sensei here 2 weeks ago to celebrate our 8th anniversary. So that's 2015 would have been our beginning. And it's kind of lame, but I just stole the name from Shindokan books, which I had started in the early 90s when I started translating. So that seemed like a pretty easy kind of marketing mix. But the name itself was meant, the character Shin means the truth. And Do, we all know, is the way, and Kan is place. So the idea of the name is that it's a place that you can come to find your truth. It's one of those things, maybe I'm off on a tangent a little bit too much here. One of the things I love about Aikido, as opposed to karate, for example, and I won't talk about other martial arts, I don't really have experience in them. So it's not necessarily fair, but if I'm talking about Aikido and karate, Aikido is a very honest martial art. If you and I are training, you know my level the moment I do a technique to you, and I know your level. And we can't lie to each other about it. I can tell you, oh, I'm a great this and a great that, but you know whether I'm crap or not.
Yes.
So in that sense, it's really honest. And so the truth there, that's you finding your truth, you confronting your own self and trying to develop as a human being. That's the idea behind the name Shindokan.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because regardless of, grades, as you said, as soon as you get on the mat, you know someone's level, and it's almost, you don't want to be given those high grades if you don't deserve it. But I think a lot of people kind of skip the truth part, maybe for the ego, and that's a whole different rooms that we could open. But
it's unfortunate that there are so many more people that have those high ranks that I don't want to be the judge, but like they're walking around with the fat heads. But at the same time, I have met some people with high ranks who kind of say to me quietly, hey, listen, I was just in the right place at the right time. I'm just trying to get better. Like that, I completely respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I've had talks about this with Tambu Sensei and Mustard Sensei, of course, on there's no kind of real criteria of what makes, like, what's a good shodan, what's a godan, for example. And I know it's case by case, and it does depend on the person, but what's your perspective about that? Like, for example, if you have like your requirements for shodan, for example, which is a significant start of your journey, obviously, but it's a lot different from a third dan to a fifth dan, of course. Could you talk about what is your criteria, or you see the truth that should be someone's path at shodan, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great one. For me, it's easy, Kimeda Sensei, because I don't actually grade my own black belts. I just send them to him. But in fairness to your question, it's a good question. Shodan, I think, I always say, if you want to know how to do a technique, ask an EQ. Right? Because they're the ones that are so focused on the details of the technique, A, B, C, all the way through. So when I forget techniques, I go looking for a brown belt because, they know it. So at shodan, you need to be able to perfect those things, I think.
Yes.
So how does that differ? It's an interesting thing Sensei used to say. He would say, it's his job to get you to shodan. It's your job to go any further.
Yeah. I like that.
Right. So he pushed, like, you got to train harder. You got to do this. And he would get you up and test you all the time. Like, the test is not really the test, as we all know, right? It's that build up to it. But after that, he would kind of step back a little bit and see, now, what are you bringing to the table? What kind of effort are you putting into getting better? Right. Third dan, I think, is, we start to use the word sensei. At that level, and I think that's a huge step. It's you now need to be able to share some stuff. So not only do you need to be able to perform it, you need to be able to make linkages. You have to be able to say, look, this Kihon waza is transferable to this Ju waza skill, and let's practice those, right? Whereas I wouldn't necessarily expect a shodan to be able to do that. When we get into the more and more senior grades, I'm kind of skipping 2 and 4, and so it's pretty subtle, right? I'm not sure I could make sincere distinctions there. But when you get to senior grades, I really think there comes a point where you need to bring something unique to the table. I mean, if you're just regurgitating, what you did as a shodan, a nidan, a sandan, well, probably you shouldn't be a senior grade. Maybe that's bold of me to say, but you've got to be doing some inquiry. You've got to be doing some self-reflecting, some as Tambu Sensei likes to say, it's the why. Why do we do this? And you need to come up with some answers for that. And I'm not saying they have to be right, and you'll probably change them, but you need to be introspective, and that's going to change how you teach, how you present, how you deal with those people. And I think that's something that starts to say, now you're a senior grade.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think for fifth dan as well is that you've made the techniques your own. Your imprint is on those techniques and in your whole Aikido. So it's kind of
Yeah.
it's
Your
not a
approach.
copy or as a regurgitation, as you said. It's more like the waza is, and my understanding was fifth dan was the last technical test, because that was, I mean, we never acquire mastery, of course, because that's forever. But that was when you should really, you've nailed the Kihon, you know how to teach it, you know how to, well, from an instructor's point of view, sorry.
Right.
But your Aikido is yours. What about fifth to sixth? Because I see that personally as a massive jump, as from fifth to sixth. I can't really speak as a sixth dan, but that the jump after that, I'm not sure. But I think fifth to sixth, and possibly with the awarding of a Shihan title. Can you speak to that?
Now we're into sticky stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, fifth to sixth. For me, it was a bit of a longer time. I didn't do kind of the minimum time. We did extra time.
Yeah.
Really, I think I was fortunate enough to have Paul Galliano. I'm not sure if you know him, as my partner for the senior grades. And most times it's interesting, not to harp on it, but to go back to that truth element. Sensei would say, "Okay, you guys, you're going to test." And we would practice and practice and practice and practice. And after about 3 or 4 months, we'd just look at each other and say, we're not ready. Like, we don't feel that we're that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd go and ask him, is it okay? Can we not test? And so we did that for 2 or 3 years in between each of them. And then eventually we felt, okay, we're ready for it. To be fair, though, in terms of testing, I didn't test for fifth, and I didn't test for sixth or seventh. So I don't have any experience about testing for those things. But at the same time, if I'm in a really lucky situation. I understand people have life situations and things happen to them. Somehow I was able to spend 33 years so far with one teacher. And when he comes to me after some amount of time, and he of course knows me and my family, and it's a very intimate relationship at that point. And he says, "Okay, you're ready for X." Well, you got to trust that.
Of course,
it's one thing to say, I turned it down. Well, wait a second, you chose this person as your teacher.
Exactly.
And you need to trust them, right?
That also reminds me of there's an old quote. I mean, forward into growth or backward into safety. And I think a lot of people, it's safe to be in a certain zone, and sometimes you become insular in your, but you need someone sometimes to show you the big picture,
and to push you, right?
Because that's.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. That safe zone is safe, but the growth happens when you're not comfortable. And
push you to fall down, because you don't learn anything in safety.
No.
Really, and it's such a cliche, but it's worth saying, we only learn through failure.
Yes.
Right? Success. I mean, think about your Aikido background. So I bet you and I have the same experience in terms of, wow, that guy who I started with, he was brilliant. Or her Kihon Dosa, oh my God, I wish I could move like that.
Yes.
But they're not in Aikido anymore.
No, exactly.
Because they were so successful so quickly, they're not getting anything out of it. But I got to struggle. Like, my hips are too tight. My shoulders are like, I'm trying to get that relaxed all the time. So when you fail and fail and fail and fail and fail, you get better.
And I think a lot of people about the whole, I guess the journey is that it's a cliche, but it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I think you have to see it as a lifetime pursuit. And that I think if you're rewarded too quickly or things come too easily, you don't appreciate that. And I think that's what you're saying. You really need to, it's that constant slow progress.
And it's a very, it's not to sound too, sabishi or something. It's a lonely process.
Yes.
This is not a group sport.
No.
This is you and your self-discovery and your development and you pushing yourself and your teacher yelling at you, but it's all inside of you. And I think, when you first start, again, you see this, right? It's like maybe there's 6 or 7 of you who all started together, and you go up the first few belts together, and then one person drops off.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get up to kind of, third queue, second queue, and there's only 3 of you left.
Yeah.
Now you're going for showdown, and you're the only one. And it just gets worse as you go higher and higher. Like, I don't know anybody I started with.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I started with my wife. She just doesn't do it anymore.
What about, for example, in your opinion, what are like some essential qualities and characteristics you'd say that are important as a Yoshinkan Aikido instructor? Or I guess as an Aikido instructor in general, but like characteristics. So yes, we have the technical side, and you can be a brilliant technician, but how to become a good instructor? I think that's really, I'm not sure if it can be taught. I was just looking at, I'm going to get to this later, but I just noticed, I hadn't read this for a while, but it was learning what cannot be taught.
Yeah.
And I think that really resonated. I just read that. I was like, oh, like,
cool. I'm glad you got that.
I know I had seen it before, but it's kind of a concept that we probably have inside us, but sometimes articulating things are very difficult, especially when it comes to obviously feelings and things about Budo. But as a teacher, and you with your background as well, I thought it's pertinent to ask you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about.
Well, I think in teaching anything, I mean, I would take it even out of Aikido and out of martial arts in general. In teaching anything, and I mean, this yourself professionally as a teacher professionally, the first thing is to understand where your audience is.
Yes.
If you're coming in here and your audience is here, well, you're a failure. That's the way it is. So you have to be able to read the crowd immediately. And be able to sort of say, okay, now that I've seen them, for example, if it's Aikido, you see them doing Kihon Dosa, and then immediately, oh, this is what I have to do for this class, for this group. And I think that's a skill that you have to sort of work on. And if you're developing within your own dojo, if you're developing teachers, that's the first thing I would say that you really have to do. Train them to have an eye for who's in front of them. Don't go in with a preconceived. I mean, I go into a class with an idea for the technique, right? So for example, tonight we did Katamochi Sankajo, Osaiichi, but there was a lot of beginners, so I couldn't do the Sankajo. I didn't do the Sankajo pin. I just did it like an Ikajo. But at least we got the Katamochi work, right? So you have to be able to adjust to what's in front of you. So the first thing is start where the audience is, right? The next thing is, you need to be able to move them forward. And forward is not, especially in a martial art, it's scary. I mean, if you got to remember your time entering a dojo. If you've never been in a dojo before, the first time going in, it's kind of a scary situation.
Yes.
So kudos to all those beginners who come in. That's a tough thing to do. So as an instructor, you need to be sensitive to that. And you need to be able to move them from one little place of safety, as you point out, to one step further, not a leap further. Because now you're asking them, don't just wade into the pool, go into the deep end and dive in. Well, that's not going to work either.
Yeah.
You got to show them one little step at a time, and then reinforce that success, because they'll be successful. If it's a small enough step, they'll be successful. I guarantee it. And then you go back and you reinforce and you reinforce and you reinforce. So this is not anybody who's a teacher. This is nothing new to you. This is a basic pedagogy.
Yes.
But it works. That's why it's important. And I find a lot of people don't do that in martial arts in general, and certainly in Aikido. And it would almost, you'd almost say you'd want to see that at higher level promotions, right? Rather than, maybe I'm just winging it here, so maybe I'm talking trash. Rather than maybe like a physical test, say, okay, we're going to watch you teach 2 or 3 classes.
Yes.
And you look for these sorts of things. Are you able to move people forward?
Yes.
In a positive way, not through fear, not through bullying, not through yelling, make them want to take that step.
Yeah. So for those that are thinking about taking that step, what kind of, I guess, skills should they be focusing on to become a better teacher? And I know, like, to become a teacher, yes, you can go to university for 3 or 4 years, but
Yeah.
in this context, as you said, I think knowing your audience is fantastic. But also knowing being a beginner again, and as you what you suggested is it's a scary place when you first walk in, and some of the great teachers, and not just Aikido teachers, but my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teachers, they'll come over and say, John, how you going? How's your day? And they walk around the mat and they shake everyone's hand, and it's just like, wow,
Nice.
this is a really nice place to be. And it's something you don't really see in Yoshinkan Aikido, and maybe that's just a difference in origins of culture, but it's very friendly, very we're going to work together today. It's rather than just that's us, and like very Japanese. You don't question the teacher, you don't do that, and this is another discussion, of course, but I think the context is different, but in a Western context, I think we have to do what you just suggested. And are there any qualities though that they can work on to, if you want to
I think you mentioned it. I'm going to steal it from you. Empathy.
Yes.
Empathy. You really need to put yourself in those students' shoes. It's when I'm teaching, of course, I'm going to demonstrate the technique and et cetera, that kind of thing. But it's not the Chris Johnston show.
Yes.
Right. It's if that's the case, then I got no business being up there. That's just me flouting my ego. Yes. It's about them. They're the ones paying the money to be here. And I need to make sure that they know it's about them. And so in that sense, you have to have that sense of empathy. But at the same time, when you have a big class, even I shouldn't say a big class, let's say 15, 20 people. I've got people who've been in, like tonight's class, we had a young guy who's only been here 4 times.
Yeah.
But I also have a 5th dan. So I got to give that white belt something. I got to move him 1 step further, and I got to move the 5th dan 1 step further.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're all the same. I got to have empathy for every one of them.
Yes.
And understand what it is that I can do to help them take their own steps, not go up in front and show off in front of them.
Yeah. Do you have instructors there, or are you the main teacher?
I am the main teacher here. I'm blessed that I have my senior, Paul Galliano, with me. He's 7th dan Shihan and senior to me, but he's not really interested in running a dojo.
Yeah.
So I get all the glory, but on his shoulders for sure.
Yeah.
And I also have, thankfully, Eli Zakaria. He's 5th dan.
Yeah.
Both of whom came from Kimeda Sensei as well. And Ellie's a wonderful teacher, wonderful uke, like such a support for the dojo as well. Yeah. So I do have some people that I can rely on. Yeah.
I was just thinking about my background and where I've come from, and I was blessed to have the Aikido Shindokan about 2 kilometers up the road from my house. And nice. So I didn't know, I always thought that was normal, having a teacher like Sensei Joe Tambu.
Yeah.
But he is undoubtedly probably, I would have to say, the greatest teacher, as in not just an amazing technician, but the ability to how he thinks and how he teaches, but also the epitomizes the word Shihan, in that like he is the teacher. He really, and how his teaching methods are, whether I wanted to be an instructor or not, I was never forced. I don't want to say I'm forced, but it was like, John, can you go and help these people? Or I started off teaching with him in the kids class, and that kind of just was a journey that he maybe nudged me on, but it was never forced, of course. No,
but he saw it in you. Yeah. Yeah.
But he's done that with a whole generation of instructors, where it's like, there is a pyramid structure in martial arts where there's the top teacher, but I think if you rely on that top teacher, when he's away, the whole thing's going to collapse.
Absolutely.
And he teaches all around the world, so he needs and needed a good base of instructors. And I was talking to another instructor recently, and they've been teaching a long time, and they just said there was no one else, it was just me. And I was kind of like,
wow, no, you got to work. You got to work to get some people up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be like, in my own osteopathy practice, I don't want to be King Dick. I want to be able to go on holiday. And for me, that's a definition of success, is if I can maintain a smooth operation, and it's not about me, So I guess Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
I didn't
sorry. This is your interview. I was just
Yeah.
something that I see a lot in, instructors who aren't used to teaching big groups. And I mean, that's a skill in itself, but he's just a master at that. And he can do it with a group of 8 people, and he can do it with a group of 100 people. But it's just a way of thinking, I think, that obviously takes time, but you do need to think about it. Unless you're of that level, 7th, 8th dan, you can't go out on the mat and go, what am I going to do today? Or does anyone have any requests? I think that's poor management. It doesn't serve.
You need to have some ideas.
Yeah.
I will say the first thing I learned from Tambu Sensei is that when I watched him teach, he's always finding some new way to present, the old dog, as it were, right?
Yeah.
And it was so engaging to see the variations he's come up with to teach this particular technique or this particular skill or whatever it was. And that, just watching him teach, really motivated me to adopt that approach.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's kind of sparked in me when I saw him. But then when I see Paye Sensei, I see the same thing.
Yes.
He's not just doing A, B, C, D, right? He's finding new ways to show the same thing. Exactly. Mustard Sensei does the same thing. Like, those top teachers are top for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. and those of us who are here and they're up here, we need to be learning from them. And instead of inflating our own egos, we should look up to them as students, regardless whether you're 5th, 6th, 7th, whether you have Shihan titles, whether you got who knows what title. Those guys are the top guys.
Yes.
And we need to constantly look to them, look to their model, Shihan, and steal what we can from them.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, we want them to be around forever. They're not going to be around forever.
Exactly.
So steal from them now.
Yeah. And that's another thing about, like, the fellowship as well, is that we want to honor those people that have made such an impact, a massive impact. But we also have to find a way of nurturing and promoting, when I say new talent, the younger generation as well. Point. And that's really what that we're kind of focused on at the fellowship is, yes, we need to honor those people, and we need to learn from them. And even we don't need to steal. They're just like, take it. Like,
it's so true. It's so true. There's such giving teachers, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say, I'm going to jump in there because I want to say publicly kudos to you. And thank you for coming up with this concept, this idea of the Yoshinkan Aikido Fellowship. I think it's a fabulous idea. And honestly, without blowing too much smoke out of your backside there, I think that's going to be, this idea will end up being the salvation of the Yoshinkan style of Aikido.
I hope so. Thank you. It's a collective effort. Yeah. It's not just me. There's a lot of people involved. And actually, it was Tambu Sensei's fault, because in an interview he did with me, he just said, what are the top Shihans, what are the foreign Shihans doing? And what are you doing? And I was kind of like, that's a good point. We can bitch and moan, and we've been bitching and moaning for 15 years, and it's got us nowhere. So it's time to take action. And it just took off. And with a lot of people support, the Kyoto event, which, we missed you at, but we're going to...
thanks. I just couldn't pull it off. But by all accounts, a fabulous event.
Yeah. And it was just great to have, and Paye Sensei and the top teachers, Tambu Sensei, Master Sensei, all the teachers in Japan, they were really instrumental in... I don't know if
really great that they showed support too, right? I mean, they didn't turn their back on you.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of people say it can't be done. It's like, well, step aside because we're doing it. And, so anyway, thank you for that. That means a lot coming from you, but it's definitely a group effort. It's not just me. I did want to ask you though, now, I actually got to know you through this book, and I have to say, this was a signed copy that I got from Paye Sensei. I don't know if you can see that.
At the
Aiki Expo in 2002.
Wow, that's going back,
So I was there,
and that's a hardcover. We don't have hardcovers anymore.
No, I've got a hardcover and a soft cover because I knew some bastard is probably going to pinch it one day, but it hasn't lasted in the dojo. So I have 2 of this, and I'll get into the other ones later. But this one's special for me because just while I'm name dropping, I was an assistant to Inoue Kancho
Nice.
for my first and last official business trip with him. But I was one of his main ukes in Las Vegas, and that was an amazing experience. But since I was there, and it was my first time to meet him, and not being too much of a fanboy, I got one of these for myself and for Tambu Sensei, which he signed, and in my prized possession. Can you tell me?
Can I give you a tidbit of info there? I don't know if I've shared with anybody. The cover, you'll like this. So in Japanese, the calligraphy is shugyo, right?
Yes.
In the background.
Yeah.
Do you know who inked that? Who drew that?
Oh no! Don't say Shioda Sensei.
Inoue Sensei.
Really?
Yeah, it's his handwriting.
Ah, I should. Wow, I didn't.
Yeah.
I haven't studied.
He told me that himself.
Harmony and confrontation. So this is one. If you don't have this book, I'm going to introduce them all slowly.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about how Aikido Shugyo came to be?
Yeah, sure. 1994, I was in Tokyo actually studying Japanese with the Japanese government program. And what I would do is on the weekends, I would go to the Hombu Dojo where Mustard Sensei would take care of me for the whole weekend, which you can imagine was fabulous.
Yeah.
And he's the one who gave me the book. He gave me the Japanese edition. He said, you should translate this book, because he knew I was studying Japanese, right? Oh. And so I took him up on it. It's like you say, somebody presents you a kind of task. Well, let's go at it, right? Yeah. And of course, my Japanese wasn't good enough to translate a book. But I did have a really good Japanese teacher. And so I said to her, hey, listen, I really want to read this book. Will you help me? And she said, I'd love to. So what I would do is I would do chapter by chapter, sometimes section by section if they were particularly difficult. And I would give her gave her a copy of the book, obviously, and I would give her my English. And she went through all of it, literally line by line, correcting errors, pointing out, maybe think about it this way or that way. So that was for me, that book was a very kind of a deep dive into studying Japanese with a teacher holding my hand the whole way. Yeah. And I should say her and her husband. She's unfortunately passed away right now. And I will say I missed her. I studied with her for over 10 years.
Wow.
And she was such a kind of positive influence. Her name was Hiroko Yamamoto. Such a positive influence for me in my approach to Japanese and trying to learn this crazy language. So
so when you so writing, had you authored anything before, or was this
I had somehow I had authoring things sort of came up naturally with me when I was doing karate. The association that I was with didn't have any like a student manual, so I wrote a student manual for them. And then the first translation, like a kind of larger, I had done a bunch of short articles and whatnot, but the first substantial translation I had done is actually a karate book that a researcher friend of mine in Canada's East Coast, he sent me and said, hey, can you help me with this? I'd like to know what's in it. And I said, sure. So I just went at it. And by the end of it, we had a book, right?
Amazing.
And that book actually launched Shindokan books.
Wow.
Because once we had it.
Was that before Aikido Shugyo?
That was, it was before Shugyo. It's called Kempo Karate Do. It's by, the author is Tsuyoshi Chitose. And by the time we had any copyright issues, we realized we didn't require copyright, so we went off and published it and made it available. But this was a time, even before PayPal, there was no online shopping, right? So people are sending me, money orders, and it takes like 6 months to get the book, and it was just a fiasco, but it was fun. It was good.
That's certainly old school. And it was it's such a great book. Can you tell me a little bit about how Aikido Jinsei came about as well? Yeah, sure.
So let me go backwards. Aikido Shugyo, Paie Sensei had actually translated so Paie Sensei had the rights to translate and publish both of those books, given to him directly by Gozo Shioda.
Wow.
And Pai Sensei had translated most of, but not all. And please, Sensei, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what you told me. But not all of Shugyo. But he's French, of course, so he translated into French.
Right.
Probably you know this. At the Hombu at the time, there were a bunch of Canadians who then took that French and put it into English, and they would publish sections in the old Yoshin magazine.
Yes.
Anyway, not to jump on those Canadians, but I found lots of errors in those. But that's just natural. From one language to another, you're going to lose stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, I did this thing directly into English. Mustard Sensei introduced me to Pai Sensei. We hit it off, and he said, "Look, you finished it. Let's just go with yours. We'll just publish yours, right?" But it's not that I just went off and did this thing. It was with his guidance and his oversight, and of course, he went through it.
Yeah, I mean, and it does say that at the bottom it is translated by both of you.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And then the next book. So again, Pai Sensei had the rights to do all of this. But he was quite busy working, at the time, right? So the bulk of that translation fell onto me, but I would, I had to kind of send him things all the time and say, "Sensei, can you check this for me? I'm not really sure I got this right. Or is that right? How do you read this person's name? Or could you ask Shioda Sensei this for me?" Or, those kind of things, right? So the Shugyo, I think, took me about 2 years. To do, and I had Jinsei less, like 6 months to a year. So I was getting faster, or the book was getting more interesting. I'm not really sure. I always tell people, if they're reading Jinsei, the red one, if at all possible, they should try to, if they have any fluency in Japanese, or if they can use a translator, they should open up Japanese Wikipedia. And Gozo Shioda Sensei is very liberal in the use of names in that book.
Yes.
And when he gives a name, I always tell people, look it up.
Yes.
And it's a bit scary.
Isn't it like, I can't remember how he usually refers to people as Mr. T or Mr.
Yeah, in Shugyo, he does that. He's very polite in Shugyo. But I think in Jinsei, he's like, screw that. I'm going to name names.
Okay. So was that on purpose in Aikido Shugyo? He didn't name people on purpose, or was that a translation?
I think so. I think he did that maybe in deference. They were alive. I'm guessing here. This is off the cuff. Yeah. I can guess who Mr. T is, and I can guess who Mr. K is.
Yeah.
But in Japanese, he says it's Mr. K. He does not give the name in Japanese. Whereas in Jinsei, he does give the names.
Yeah, I noticed that with his Himura Masahiko Sensei, he does name him obviously as his, because they were mates. But yeah, I'll have to go back and read it, because I haven't. I've read it, but this is a very worn.
Yeah,
well-thumbed copy.
I'll send you a fresh one. You can mess up.
I've actually got a fresh one too, in case this one. But that's definitely one of my prized possessions. And what about with Uchideshi? Because I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And
I'm embarrassed about that one. Pai Sensei actually passed that to me, I'm guessing a bit here, maybe a decade ago.
Okay.
And I started reworking it, because he's French and he's trying to write in English. So I kind of massaging it, that kind of thing. And I send it to my the same woman, Donna Maloney, who edited the first two. I sent it to her to read, and she's a brilliant editor. So yes. I would, for example, do, something in Shugyo, right? And I've read it 15 times now. I've had friends of mine read it over. I think it's good to go, right? So I pass her the book, and I think, she might find 5 or 6 typos, but that's she finds like 100 to 150 mistakes per page.
Wow.
It's unbelievable what a benefit it is to having a professional editor.
And those fresh eyes as well.
Oh yeah. It reads so well because of her, really.
Yes. Yeah.
So she did Uchideshi as well.
Yeah.
And she returned it to me, and I don't have any excuse. I sat on it. I didn't finish it, Yeah. And then I guess I'm not sure how many years ago now, 3, 4, 5 years ago, Pai Sensei was coming over, and I thought, I want to surprise him. I want to say, hey, Sensei, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
So I worked my butt off, to format it, lay it out, get it all together. And I presented it with him, and he went through it one more time to kind of say, hey, what about this? No, they got that wrong, that kind of thing, just to make sure it's all 100% what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then we're off and running.
Yeah. I thought it was,
And
I remember reading it, and I never went to Kogane because I got to Japan in 1996, and it was in Ochi.
right. Yeah.
It was, the description was so vivid. I was there. Like I could imagine exactly like the street scene. I could imagine, that feeling of, I guess, the nervousness and stuff. Like it was really like I was enthralled. It was such a great.
He really brought that across, and I have to say, and I mean, I'm gonna wimp out here. I'm glad he brought it across, because I don't really want to live that. Like that. That's a tough experience he went through.
Yes.
Any of those guys who trained at that time, that time in the Yoshinkan,
wasn't it? That those particular members were all.
I'm not sure I could have survived that.
Yeah.
I mean, those were tough guys, and they left a mark on Yoshinkan and the future of Yoshinkan, and some really positive marks.
Yes.
But I would say some negative things too. Like you were talking about, that really, that all comes from that time.
Yes.
And I think we need to start moving away from that a little bit. That's my personal.
Yes.
Because we're not making any friends with that, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a situational. It was maybe a generational thing as well. But I think we need to learn.
And good for the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're all formidable teachers. They were all, as you said, made a huge impact. And I don't know if you could have had, without that pressure, were those diamonds able to be made? And I probably think not. I think it was.
But I think as we were saying before, you got to look to these teachers that we have today. And when you look at the teachers that we have today who are around at that time in that dojo, and we have footage of them, we can see what they were like.
Yes.
When we compare the person today to that person there, they're not the same. So I think, again, my personal view, those people in Yoshinkan who are still trying to mimic that 1980 generation, it's a mistaken approach.
Yes.
This is 2023. I mean, you need, those teachers have moved on.
Yes.
Follow that lesson. Don't follow what they were in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a positive step.
Yes.
And I can only, I can do that, and I can't tell somebody else to do that. They got to do themselves. But for me personally, I think it's a mistake to try to copy those times.
And also that was one of the criticisms of the Sensei course, in that it was a great stepping stone to, if you wanted to obviously become an instructor, if you wanted to kind of do anything in life. And I was I didn't like it at the time, but I look back and, it was an important lesson. But those people who were stuck, like I was Sensei and I'm just going to teach like that. It's like, well, good luck, but that's not how Aikido is supposed to be taught. That was a program within the Hombu Dojo.
I'm so glad to hear you say this.
Yeah. Well, I could have an episode about this myself, but
well, I'll do you one better. Since we're being really public about it, I tell people all the time, in my humble opinion, having never done the Sensei course. So, right, with that baggage out, I think the course is a complete failure. A complete, utter failure.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at the number of people that went through it and ask yourself, how many of those people are still doing Aikido?
Yes.
I mean, that makes it a failure. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think the structure of it, if it was made today and it was, I guess it was born out of a certain time, and it was coming from what you said, like the 80s and 90s, where it was like, this is how you teach Aikido. This is what they need to be. And I think now with our methods of teaching, and I mean, I look back at some of the stuff we did. I was 22 years of age, so it was like I had no excuse. I was a young man.
Great.
Yeah, that was great. But there were some things that, like, there were people that were teaching that should never have been allowed to, and did in some ways despicable things, and at other people's cost. And I think if it was done now and it was organized by people who knew what they were doing, it would be far, like, the idea of it is amazing.
Yes, I agree. The execution. Yeah. Well, we look to the newer versions of it, right?
Yeah.
Chida Sensei apparently has a course. I know a couple of guys that have graduated from that. It's not the same course as the Senshusei course. Pai Sensei has a course. It's not the same. Like they've changed it themselves because they know it's a failure.
Yeah.
That model for today. Let me clarify, right? I'm going to get a lot of heat for that, I think.
No, I think it has to be said because, I mean, you can train hard and seriously, but you do not need to be berated and yelled at. And I think, and also I'm going to cop shit for this, but I don't care, is that the Japanese were always fair. It was like, there were hard classes, but it was technical and there was always a point. Whereas I think some foreigners that were teaching, it was all about punishment and it was all about ego. And being 22, you can be resentful and all the rest. It was great for me. It was a stepping stone. I could then teach in the Hombu. I never taught like that. I'd never taught the 8:30 class or the 11 o'clock on Saturday class. It was fun. I wanted people to enjoy.
Yeah.
But, you know,
but you've clearly moved on from that too. You're not doing Aikido like that.
No.
And you don't teach the way they taught you. You can't and run a dojo. You're not going to have a dojo for very long.
Yeah. I agree. But I think those teachers that you said they're doing a much better job. You know, you can go to Chida Sensei's dojo or Pai Sensei's dojo in Kyoto, be a Kenshusei, and that's what it's about, isn't it? A research student. Like the whole special Senshusei, there was nothing special about it. Maybe that was the irony. That was the joke there. You're special, you know?
Yeah, they close the door to the office and tell jokes about you.
Yeah, I'm sure that happened. But what do you think about, I mean, I've asked a lot of teachers this, and I'm not being controversial, but I think the current situation with Hombu is not ideal, and it hasn't been an ideal situation for a long time. And I guess the fellowship was born out of being able to just, regardless of your affiliation or where you fit or who you train with, that doesn't matter. Let's all come together. It was basically no politics, no bullshit, just with open arms. And that's what the fellowship is about. And it's been kind of great in that it's not an organization, because that's rigid and fixed, whereas we're more of it, like it's a movement. It's like, if you want to join us, that's great. You have the access to these people if you want them. If you don't want them, that's fine. You can do your own thing as well. And that's been really popular. But I think I hasten to use IYAF because that has some negative connotations.
Yeah, I still taste bad, that thing.
Yeah. Some kind of international body. I don't know how it would look. What do you think? Would something like that work, do you think, with the goal of bringing the international community together, but in a more structured way, as in, you know, a grading committee, for example, made up of, you know, the top 8th dans or 9th dans or whatever, not necessarily affiliated to Japan, but that's definitely not a hard and fast thing. How would you see it, or does it have legs?
Yeah, I think it's more than got legs. As you say, it's already a movement. I think it's a shame that there isn't more inclusion coming from the center. You know, I will say one of the things I really loved about Noriki Sensei when he was Dojo Cho is he reached out to, you know, the community outside of Japan and tried to do things for us. And I don't know if he's listening, Sensei, if you're there. I've only met him once. I really liked him, and I really, really sincerely liked that he was reaching out to the international community. And I think you have to do that. And we don't see that happening right now. So that's where the YAF idea, I think, would accomplish that aspect of the overall body. One thing is, though, although I laud the idea of, you know, a kind of headless organization, I really think you're going to find that you need some sort of structure.
Yes.
There needs to be, it doesn't necessarily need to be one person, but I really believe that ultimately there needs to be the top, right? And this top sets the direction of the organization, you know, whether it's a dojo, a medical clinic, or Coca-Cola. You know, there's a top echelon that sets the direction. And so by virtue of that, you have a structure.
Yes.
You know, and inherently in a Japanese martial art, I can think whether you like it or not, there is this structure based on, if nothing else, Dan rankings.
Yes.
So we're expected to uphold certain, if, maybe even if you just want to say, let's say my skill level's really low, but my character is really high. At least I have character for that level.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm expected to uphold that kind of vision. And so I think ultimately some structure is going to have to come into it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think you should be shunning that. I think with the right people and who have the right approach and the right mindset, I think it's going to be hugely positive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as you said, that pyramid structure is just doomed to fail, because the guy at the top, when he topples or he is toppled, as we've seen time and time again in our current organization. I mean, I really like Nariki Sensei, who's a person, he's a good friend of mine. We spent a lot of time together in Japan. And when he got to that position, I was very glad, because I knew he was someone who could make a difference. And he always will make a difference. But it's a shame that in that capacity, he wasn't really allowed to, I guess. He could only do so much. And that's a very a limitation.
But it was so clear that he was trying, and I personally appreciate that,
Yeah.
In terms of, sorry.
No, just, like, you're right. Like, but he went out on a limb for me with certain things, and he didn't need to, but he said to me it was wrong what they're doing. I need to help you. And I was just like, look, wow. Look, I don't need you to, like, don't.
But that's that character piece, right? Yes. There it is. There it is, shining bright.
And you can't teach that. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really impressive. And I just said, look, I don't want to pursue this any longer. He's like, well, I do. I'm like, okay.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm such a good story to hear. I was going to say structure, I agree with you. That structure eventually will fail, right? But if you turn it around so that the point, I don't know if I can do this visually.
I see what you mean.
The point, so an upside down triangle.
Yes.
The top people are at the bottom. And what I mean by that is two things. One is the best top people are people that don't want it.
Yes.
If you ask Paya Sensei, Tambu Sensei, Mustard Sensei, hey, do you want to lead an international org? I mean, they're going to say no.
Yeah.
Because they don't need that headache.
Yeah.
But we need them.
Yes.
Right? So they're the people that don't want it. And what happens if you turn that structure upside down, so the pyramid's upside down, you clearly get this visual that the weight of the organization rests upon them.
Yes.
And that's a really onerous, that's why they don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. But if we can get a structure like that, where from them now at the bottom, they support the next tier supports the next tier, et cetera. So the goal is to support all those people up there, not to look down at all those people down there. So this is not ego.
Yeah.
It's more humility, right? I'm looking up, what can I do for you?
Yeah. I love it.
So it's a kind of different structural idea.
Are you looking for a new job or?
Yeah, well, I'll send a resume.
No, it's funny you should say, because a lot of people have reached out to me recently, especially after Kyoto, and surprised, I guess, but very pleased with how successful it was. But there's a real need, and some very senior people who, they're thinking about it and they want something to happen. But it's one of those things that, if one guy's screaming over here and this person, it's not going to work. It has to be cohesive, and it has to be something without ego. And you need the right people who are not going to be like, this is about me, this is about, because those people come out of the woodwork, as we know. There's
and as soon as those noses get out of joint, the whole thing goes.
But sometimes people have to know their place as well. And as much as a democratic process that I want it to be, it's also like sometimes
it's amazing that people, martial art like this, where, it's all about your place, right? You line up in that spot every class, because that person on your right is your senior. Period. So it's amazing that we go through this process 10, 20, 30, some people 40 or more years, and still haven't figured that out. That, it's not about you. It's about your place and what you can bring to the overall.
Especially if you're espousing things like it's not about the ego, but then you know, everything becomes about the ego for them. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah. But
Yeah.
we digress.
Yeah.
But I think there's some really good ideas, and I think with the right people behind it, I think it's going to work. And at the very least, you know, if it's just the YAF, the
Yeah.
fellowship, just bringing people together and training, and that's kind of 90% of what it's all about anyway, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where we, you know, to steal my own thing here, that's where we find ourselves, where we find our truth, where we confront ourselves
yeah,
on
yeah,
the mat, not by watching videos or dare I say, reading books.
yeah.
It's on the mat when you grab me and I grab you.
Yeah. Now, this is a really hard last question.
Yeah.
All your years on the mat, and I'm sure it's translated, probably your Aikido speaks probably more off the mat than on the mat, and you've had so many, you know, accomplishments as a rider and a teacher. Are there any other qualities that you take away from Aikido in itself, and that you've been able to use in your everyday life, whether it be
Oh
job or
gosh,
occupation? That's probably for part two, but
yeah,
you know.
no, that's a kind of, that's the big question, right? Often, I mean, listen, it's not that I've had the chance to go around and teach all over the place like some of those top teachers, but if I get a chance and I'm in front of a new group, one of the things I like to do to them is I say to the group, I say, listen, how many people, you know, why do you do martial arts, right? And of course, what are you going to get? You're going to get self-defense, you're going to get fitness, you're going to get fun. Like, these are your answers, right?
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, how many of you had a physical altercation in the last week? No, nothing. Okay, well, maybe too short, I say, right? So how about the month, last month? Nothing. 3 months? So I've asked this a number of times. Once I had to go to 1 year and one person has put their hand up. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course, it happens. But my point is, people say they do martial arts for self-defense, but they're just lying to themselves. Because that's not the world we live in anymore. I'm not saying it's not dangerous, and I'm not saying people don't live in bad areas. For sure, some people are a different situation than I am, for sure. But by and large, if that's the case, you have to really ask yourself what it is you're getting out of martial arts, what it is you're getting out of the martial arts training. It's not going downtown and picking fights. Like, I'm not doing that, sorry. But I do confront, like right now, you and I are confronting each other, if you want to use that word, right? It's an interaction between two people. And Aikido is absolutely marvelous at teaching us how to do that. How not to be overpowering, how to be accepting, how to help both of us be winners. You know, I often tell this story. There was only one time I ever had an argument with my wife.
Once was enough.
Well, yeah, no, that's a complete lie. Anyway, I somehow I had the presence of mind to kind of stop and take that Aikido lesson and ask myself, you know, what is it she needs right now, right? If she's uke, I got to give her what she needs.
Yeah.
So, and I realize it's kind of obvious if you can detach yourself for a second. What she needed was for me to apologize for something that clearly I didn't do, but you know, so I apologized to her. I said, honey, listen, whatever it is, you think X, I'm really sorry you think that. Here, let me give you my side of it.
Yeah.
Like, that ended the argument immediately. And that's purely Aikido.
Yes.
The problem is, of course, I can't do that every day. Like, we're working on that, right? That's the reason I'm training. I'm not going outside and think, wow, I got to get this first control to work on this guy who's mugging me. You know, touch wood. I've never been mugged. I'm not going to get mugged on my way to the pub after this.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not going to put myself in that situation, but I am going to confront people.
Yes.
I am going to have to deal with people. As a teacher professionally, I had to deal with 30 at a time. Sometimes, like now, I got to deal one-on-one. In the dojo, I get, you know, 20, 25 in front of me. I got to deal with them.
Yeah. With
my kids, my wife, the people at the store. I'm sure if Aikido is not helping you, that's where it's helping you. Absolutely. You know, and if you can steal all those lessons that your teacher is giving you, whoever that is, because I'm sure they're doing the fabulous job. If you can steal those lessons and say, how can I put that into my daily life? Then Aikido is useful to us. Absolutely. I mean, if you're the type of person that only judges your Aikido on, can I go out and beat people up? I'm sorry, that's a pretty shallow approach. You're probably, no, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. And do you have any upcoming any projects or books that you can talk about, or any top manuscripts that have crossed?
No, nothing's top secret. If I talk about it, maybe it'll come out publicly.
You can manifest it.
Yeah. If I say it, it'll be true. So the first thing on my plate is next week. I'm having the great pleasure to go and train with Tambu Sensei and Mustard Sensei in Europe. And I'm really looking forward to kind of following around in their footsteps and learning from them just by being around them.
Yeah.
In a different situation. I see them here, but this will be a whole new experience for me, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. I do have there's at least 2 other books that are done and finished, and these things somehow they just take a long time, One is a book by Ando Sensei.
Oh, okay.
And he has it. There's some copyright issues to work out, and he's a busy guy too, so that might take some time.
Yeah.
But super, having read it, super interesting book, very readable, lots of great lessons in it. Sensei, if you're listening, please let's get this out. And the other is another copyright issue is holding this one up. It's a novel, actually. The novelist is Tsumoto Yo. He's in fact, he may be passed away right now. I haven't I got his okay a number of years ago to translate this book he did on Sokaku Takeda. Wow. He's famous for writing historical fiction in Japan, and he only writes about martial artists. And what he's also famous for is his research. So if he says, John and Chris spoke on this night, it happened. Yes. Now he'll fictionalize the conversation, but the events are real events, right? Yeah. Anyway, so he wrote this book on Sokaku Takeda, and it's a page burner. Like, I'm already picking the Hollywood actors to who's playing what, right? Yeah. But the publishing company is kind of held up on it. They're not. I got the okay to translate it, but I don't have. They own the publishing rights of it, so I'm not. If there's anybody watching who's got some publishing interests who could help out, that would be really great. Yeah. So
I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to seeing that. And what about any other so you got your trip, so it is currently, we're in mid-October 2023 at the moment, so anything happening in the next teaching wise in the next like 6 to 12 months, or
interestingly, these things kind of come up fairly quickly. I don't have anything on the books right now. This will be my longest time away from the dojo. I'm kind of like a homebody in that sense. Like I like being here. I want to be here. I'm gonna miss the dojo. I'll be away 3 weeks with them.
Yeah.
So that's a fairly big trip for me. I know Pius.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say Pius Sensei is going to be in California is it March or May? Oh, early next year. I'll probably go down and see him there.
Yeah. That actually leads me to maybe a question that I've been wanting to talk about. Manifesting things is about meeting people in Kyoto. There was a lot of Canadians and a lot of Americans that attended, and it was an amazing representation. And talking to a few of them, I mean, being able to replicate Kyoto every year is obviously, that's not a goal because it's unrealistic. And so our goal was initially every 2 or 3 years we'll have an event. But I was talking to Mike Kimeda Sensei, or Spike, who was a good friend of mine back in Tokyo years ago, who I haven't actually seen for about 25 years. But we've been talking a lot, and he was one of the main founders of the fellowship, and putting it all together in the Facebook group. And we were kind of talking, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, but we were talking about an idea about perhaps a yearly or every 2 years, like we do, a seminar in Canada and then a seminar in the US, and that could appeal to the people in North America. Of course, we'll always throw Japan in somewhere along the line because that's always cool to be in Japan. I guess, various teachers, everyone kind of is doing things independently, which is great, but to be able to have, I guess, a concerted effort where we say, okay, we're going to do something in Canada this year, and everyone in the world's invited, but those in North America would be certainly easier to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So the vision we were talking about is maybe like a summer camp where we actually go to a facility where we can stay there and, have a campfire and train and do some outside weapons work. But I think it would be easy to organize. It's just kind of getting people on the same page and doing that. Do you think that would have, talking about legs, do you think that would be something that people would be interested in?
I'll say I'm in. Yeah, no, I think it would work. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. For me, it's a personal issue. I couldn't do Kyoto because I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Right. And it was just too much for me. Yeah. So that's a key thing. If you can make it so that it's really easy for people, like once you get somewhere, listen, we got you, right? Yeah. We got a place for you to stay. Somebody's going to help you with food, whatever it is. So you make it really easy for people to do, then they'll come.
Yes.
And you make the cost as affordable as can be. You cover the costs. People aren't buying a small island off of this, and let's move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that would be it could be really good, actually.
Yeah, I think it's just putting a good committee together that would be made up of, however you would want to do it. But I think it was a really good idea, and I just think rather than individual trips are fine, but if we can kind of make it like a summer school, which they do in Europe.
Yeah.
Some kind of thing. So
North American summer school, and then switch the location every year.
Yeah. So that's what we're kind of talking about. So hopefully, if anyone's listening and you're interested in the US and Canada, we should plan it, because I think it'd be great. And rather than having what we talked about, rather than 3 8th dans, you have 1 8th dan and the local instructors who can teach, because we want to showcase them as well.
Yeah, great idea.
Next year, you do it in Canada and you invite Mustard Sensei or Tambu Sensei, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the same lineup. But I think the point of it, besides getting people together, would be to showcase these teachers that need to that have a lot to offer as well. We need to build a next generation. So
and build that community, right? I think one of the, if you're going back to the old IYF days, one of the downfalls of that concept was that it separated all of us.
Yes.
Every dojo had a direct link to the Hombu, which meant if you were the dojo down the street, well, I wasn't talking to you and we weren't going to the Hombu together. I was my own big shot and I called the Hombu myself. So it was almost divisive in a backhanded sort of way. It wasn't the intent, but I think it ended up being that way. Whereas this idea would build that community back again.
I think it's fantastic. I think maybe the first one would be as soon as Paya Sensei. You've got one of the greatest teachers in the world coming in. I think it's April or May, as you said. I think he's going to Sacramento and then to San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. And
well, let's get him on the phone. Wait a sec.
I reckon we should. I've got him on speed dial somewhere. So
do
that rather than waiting. I mean, we've got we've got 2024. 2024 already.
Yeah, it's already done. Yeah, and then 2025 we can book something in Canada.
I think that would be marvelous. Let's put it out there.
Doesn't want to go to Southern California.
Yeah. That'll be terrible.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But anyway, Sensei, thank you very much for your time. It's been fantastic, and I'd love to. We'll do a part 2 at some stage where
awesome.
I really want to dive into.
We can get into nitty gritty.
Yeah, the nitty gritty and keeping it fun and informative, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And we
really enjoyed this
met in person, but I feel like our interactions were like we're old mates, and it's
I feel like I have a brother here that I've never met yet.
Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. So thank you very much for coming on to Marshall Musings, and let's get the US and Canada summer school idea going.
I'm in for sure.
Well, thank you for your time. And this will be released very very shortly. Our next guest will be actually Dave Rubin Sensei from the UK. So he'll be on. He's very busy, but we'll be interviewing him in a couple of weeks. So thank you, everyone. And Chris Sensei, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in hopefully Southern California very soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody. It was